And there was blood. A lot of blood. That guy did end up surviving, by the way, and for the record, I did see that video. I'm Dia Ghoul. Welcome to my channel where we have spooky talks about spooky topics. Today, we will be talking about the millennial nostalgia of shock sites. I was thinking back to my edgy teen years back in the early 2010s, and if you weren't there, one of the staples of 2010 edgelord culture was shock sites. We were all already on the internet, and what better way to use that time than to shock and gross out our friends, as well as test our own endurance. In these edgelord circles, the more morbid and politically incorrect you were, the better. And the shock sites of the time were a pretty clear extension of this attitude. Since this was a time before the full throttle of social media and algorithms took over, I can't help but imagine that the shock site experience must be much different for kids today. That is, if they're even a prevalent thing anymore. It seemed like such a morbidly unique time in my life, and such a unique time for the internet in general, so I figured I'd give my perspective on that time. So, what is a shock site? Simply put, it is a website, video, or picture that you share with your friends to shock them. I would say that there are two main categories of shock sites, which are gore and gross out. Gore videos tend to involve the maiming and death of real-life people. In its least gruesome state, you will see videos of surgeries, car crashes, or injuries. But due to their extreme nature, death videos are a little bit more widespread. Gross out shock media, however, doesn't necessarily portray any physical harm at all. These pictures and videos often include bodily fluids or strange and immoral adult content, and this type of media is often used as an endurance test. Think back to the days of the old, 2 girls, 1 cup challenge. Some shock media manages to land itself into both categories, both gore and gross out. The main examples that come to my mind are Mr. Hands. Mr. Hands has the gross out factor of spicy adult times with an animal, a horse more specifically. And the gore factor comes in because this guy died doing this. Yeah, I never saw this one, but it is still notorious. And the next example that came to my mind of a video that lands into both categories is One Man, One Jar. Now, this guy tried to have spicy adult times with a glass jar. And there was blood. A lot of blood. That guy did end up surviving, by the way, and for the record, I did see that video. I have some regrets in my life. Some of these were individual pieces of media floating around the internet, but as my video title suggests, there were entire websites dedicated to this type of media. As far as I understand, this all began with Rotten.com, which came out in 1996. Not to sound completely psychotic, but I think it makes some sense that shock sites and I were born in the same year. God was really at work in 1996. Rotten.com hosted images of graphic and tragic events, often accompanied by insensitive titles. The content on this site fell under a drastic range of content, from car crashes to autopsy photos to 9/11 jumper footage to fake images of Princess Diana's body. And they did know that this was fake, by the way, but they posted it anyway because they knew that it would gain traction to their website. The people running Rotten.com were OG internet trolls through and through. One of my favorite facts that I found while researching this website was that they trolled the Burlington Coat Factory by buying the domain trenchcoat.org in reference to the Trenchcoat Mafia, aka the Columbine shooting, and linking it to the Burlington Coat Factory's official website. Yeah, safe to say Burlington Coat Factory was not happy about this, but I still think it's hilarious. I never personally used Rotten.com. It shut down in 2012, and that's right around the time period where I started consuming shock media, so it makes sense that I would miss out on this one. Love them or hate them, Rotten paved the way and set the standard for all shock sites that followed. Some took a step in the more serious, uncensored news direction, but at first, shock sites were crass, crude, and blatantly offensive, made by and for internet trolls. Soon enough, the internet exploded with websites just like this, and some images started making their way into the culture of mainstream internet users. And at the time, a lot of the mainstream internet users were teenagers. I know it's hard to comprehend back then, but not everybody was on the internet 24/7 in those days. Like, I still had a couple of friends back then who didn't have internet at their house. Most of us did have access, but adults didn't seem to understand or care about social media and chat rooms and things like that. But us 2010 teenagers, we were on that. We were all about that, and we loved to be online. At this point, you have teens pranking each other with the likes of Porsche Girl, Goatsy, and Two Girls, One Cup. Sometimes in very public spaces, by the way, such as the library or the school computer lab. Because, like I said, smartphones were in their infancy, so we didn't all have internet access right in our pocket. With an adult comprehension, it is extremely disturbing to think that this is what teenagers were doing, and it really goes to show the dangers of unsupervised internet usage by minors. But as someone who was a minor back then, this shared trauma amongst my peers feels so whimsical and nostalgic to look back on. I know, I'm a damaged person, but it's fine. I'm fine. We had Ogreish, we had LiveLeak, and we had my personal favorite, Best Gore. I was a pretty frequent viewer on Best Gore in my early teen years, being morbidly curious and testing the bounds of that curiosity. Best Gore seems to have operated in a similar way to Rotten.com, but they really honed in the theme on gore videos. Whereas Rotten also had other stuff. They had gross out stuff as well. They had all sorts of things on there. But as the name suggests, Best Gore was all gore content. If real videos of human death aren't enough to turn your stomach, the comment sections in these videos certainly would. Yes, there were comments sections on these videos of actual human death. And they were littered with racial slurs, misogyny, and just general insults towards the dead people featured. As I said before, these websites were homes for internet trolls. A lot of us frequented these sites, but actually having an account was the real red flag. Now, Best Gore was operated out of Canada by owner Mark Marek. Mark was a big advocate for free speech, and to American citizens such as myself, this might seem obvious, but the laws in Canada are just a little bit different than the laws we have here. Whether it's simply an excuse for sketchy interests or just an odd choice, Best Gore was Mark's way of protesting Canadian and/or government censorship. However, his stubbornness regarding his cause and his operation of the site would ultimately be his downfall. In 2012, a video was uploaded to Best Gore called One Lunatic, One Ice Pick. If you're a true crime junkie, you already know where this is going. This was a violent and sexually graphic murder tape sent to the Best Gore owner directly by the murderer himself, Luca Magnotta. Luca was chasing fame and attention pretty much from the moment he was born. A huge narcissist, to say the least, and I don't use those kind of terms lightly. His whole motive for the murder was to upload it online and gain notoriety. And with no help from Mark, the Best Gore owner, this sadly became a reality. Mark adamantly refused to remove the video. He insisted that to do so would go against his cause, but others speculate that he just was enjoying the traction to his website. Personally, I think that both of these factors were at play when he decided to leave the video up. He eventually took it down, but in 2013, Mark was charged with 1 count of corrupting morals in connection with the video. Despite this and other legal trouble, Best Gore was up and running until 2020. Now, when you look up the site, you are met with this image and a frequently asked questions section regarding the site. I already know that Luca Magnotta was very unoriginal, but he directly ripped his title format from previous shock videos, such as 3 Guys, 1 Hammer, and the infamous 2 Girls, 1 Cup. I know that nowadays it's normal to use popular title formats to get a boost in the algorithm, but that was not a factor here. This just really comes off as lazy and scummy. Like, even more scummy than it already is. Killing someone is scummy enough. There is a popular Netflix documentary about this case, but to see it all unfold in real time was really something else. I look back at seeing these kind of messed up videos with my friends, and somehow these memories just give me so much joy. Shock media is still alive and well, but the internet has changed so much that this media has kind of been forced underground. In this regard, things have come full circle to the shock sites from before my time. For me, I could just Google gore and a whole bunch of websites would come up. But before they exploded in popularity, you needed to do a little bit more digging. My boyfriend is Gen X, and he actually knew somebody who owned and operated a shock site back in their day. When I was talking about my script for this video, he mentioned this to me, and I figured, like, man, you've got to talk about this. I figured a brief Gen X perspective could give us some vital information on the progression of shock sites over time. So let's welcome my boyfriend, Squid, to the channel. So tell us a little bit about your experiences with shock sites, like 2 Girls, 1 Cup and before. You were telling me it was mostly like gross out stuff and not as much gore back then?
Yes, correct.
Tell us about your friend and the shock site that he owned.
His name was Nate Backus. He had a site up for a few years, mainly pictures of puke and poop and stuff, and toilets and just gross stuff. Yeah.
And you said he made money from this?
Yes. You would get checks every month, like $75 or so.
People are making money off of poop and puke, I guess. I wonder if any of that was fetish content, or like people were watching it for fetish reasons, do you think?
I would hope not, but there's a lot of sick fucks out there. Possibly. I'm sure. None that I knew. But yeah.
So you're telling me this wasn't too common, like, in the mainstream. It was mostly just you and your friends who would look at, like, shock sites and show each other that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah?
It was pretty early on, yeah.
So you guys were the pioneers, I guess.
No, I wasn't. I had no site.
Your friend was, I guess. Okay. That brings me to the shock media of today. Due to Google's bots and blocking features, you need exact links to find these websites. Or you could just check Reddit. That's probably the easiest way, actually. But you're much less likely to just stumble upon them. However, due to the explosion in popularity of social media sites such as TikTok, people can prank others with shock media on a mass scale. The murder of Bianca Devins is a prime example of this. Bianca Devins was a teenage girl who was viciously murdered by a friend, who was also like her pseudo-stalker, who posted a photo of her mutilated corpse online. Over the course of less than a few hours, This image was spread all over Instagram and then on other websites by the time it was taken down there. This image just went completely viral. Groups of anonymous users blamed the teenager for her own death and mocked her in various ways. Very reminiscent of the shock sites of yore, but much, much more public. What once started as the type of thing you just show a handful of friends to gross them out became something that you can spread to millions of people at the click of a button. Yes, these sites are quick to take down the offending material, but not necessarily quick enough to stop it from going viral. What was once a morbid, sick, yet intimate joke among friends has taken on a much more soulless and malicious approach, as if it weren't already soulless and malicious enough. Maybe I'm just old and think that everything from the 2010s is better, but it's a little bittersweet to see what many have referred to as the downfall of shock sites. Like I said, shock sites still exist. They're just harder to find due to the domineering forces of the almighty algorithm. But hey, maybe that's for the best. The edgy kids of today have to settle for reading creepypasta and stabbing their friends. Maybe it didn't get better. With that said, I'm Dia Ghoul, and I hope you had a spooky time. Like and subscribe if you want.